So to give you guys a bit of a context, a few months ago, we kind of started doing these like weekly webinars. And the idea is to get people kind of trained or understanding different concepts of digital ministry. And we share it with a subscription list of people who count themselves or yearn to be digital missionaries for the Adventist church. And as we've kind of been going through these, I find that the conversation tends to always drift towards how we use the internet and how we use social media as humans. And so much of it is like we're posting content and we're trying to, impress the lives of others with the gospel and these types of things. And I was kind of restructuring my life and going on a completely different direction and trying to navigate how to share and build in this ministry and encourage other people, and at the same time feeling really burnt out from being in front of screens a lot of the time. And naturally, though people don't really agree with me, I'm an introvert, so I have to be quite careful. Alice is like, oh, I don't know if that's true. So I have to be really careful with my emotional and social energy, and that applies even online. And so I made the decision recently to take some time off from social media, with the bare exception of messaging people for work, which is, impossible to avoid. And so the conversation kind of got brought up with how do we use social media authentically, and that comes up every week, but how do we also use it in a way that ensures that we are spiritually healthy and emotionally and mentally healthy as well. So the reason why I brought you on was because you have one of those presences, if that's the word, online, which is, quite far reaching. And so I thought we could all just have kind of like a organic conversation about how we essentially navigate being online as individuals rather than as like a corporate entity, and how we balance that with our own emotional and spiritual needs as well. So that's kind of the topic for today. I wanted to throw out kind of like just a black and white question to start off with, and I kind of shared these with you guys a little bit earlier. The first one was the question, is social media good or bad? There's a lot of head nodding.
It's both. It's not black and white. Nothing's black and white. When radio first came out, we were scared to use it because that was the devil's thing. Every generation, as something new comes out, there's this push and pull, I feel like, within our church do we use it or do we not? And realistically, it's my belief, we should be at the forefront of it. And this is why, is because those who are at the forefront of it are helping create what it becomes. And instead of being at the tail end of it, trying to catch up, because all of a sudden we realize this is what everyone's using, we should be at the forefront of doing it. There's going to always be bad everywhere. I mean, just look at humanity. We're humans. There's fallibility. But in its essence, nothing is bad in and of itself. It's when humans touch it that it becomes bad or good. So we have to be there to counteract what else is out there. That's how I view it. I mean, I could have said it was black or white, but I know that's not the answer you wanted anyways.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on Alyssa's point as well. I think, I like that. I like that answer. And, as I was thinking about that question too, the short answer is that, it depends on how you use it, right? Obviously, all you have to do is just go on Google and just type that question that you just posed, Ruth, and you say, ask, is social media bad for you? And obviously you'll have a plethora of search results, a lot of hits. Well, you'll have the same thing if you to frame the question differently. Social media good for you? Again, you'll have the same amount of articles as well. So, I like to personally think of social media as a tool, like say a fork or a spoon, or a knife. And the effectiveness of a tool, I think, depends on like two things for me. You have the design of the tool, right? How the tool is actually made or constructed for its intended purpose. And then on number two, the intentions of its user. So you have two things. You have the design of the tool and the intention of the user. And so if you look at the architecture of social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or any of these platforms, they are designed perfectly designed actually for what it's supposed to be used for. And there's countless hours in research, and so much goes into making it what it is right now. And so that means that the only variable that we have is in how we use it, because we don't have control over its design. So yeah, I mean, in the same way you can use a knife to spread some vegan butter on your gluten-free toast. um, you can still use that knife to cut somebody, and make them bleed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the short answer, honestly. It's not a black, it's not like either or. It's basically, it comes down to like how you use it.
I was looking on my desk. I'm like, oh man, I don't have my vegan butter and my toast and my knife, but I do have a pair of scissors. And I remember in high school, we were still learning to cut things out in the correct, not cut over the line and that type of thing. And then all of a sudden, a kid just got really angry and threatened to stab somebody with a pair of scissors, which is, like, let's pray for them. But I mean, they're fine now. They're all good. But I mean, this is the thing, and I wanted to kind of, again, we're using the language of piggybacking, like the reason why I asked the question is because there are those out there that feel that it is black and white. And it's important, you've mentioned that it's not the actual tool itself, it's how we use it. I've experienced in business meetings and things like that, people becoming visually frightened or nervous at the thought of our church having like a church page on social media or these types of things because of their experience. And the reason why this conversation comes up is just so that we're aware that, yeah, people do think in black and white with this. And let's kind of explore why, there is a fear of using it, if there is one, or why there is this just like blanket, it's okay, do whatever as well. Here's another question. Would Jesus or his disciples use social media if it was around in 1st century AD Jerusalem, Samaria, Judea, the rest of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had to think about it. And so I think there could be some reasons to suggest that they would use social media rather than not. And there's like two big reasons for me. The first one is just the actual gospels. So what we know today as the gospels were, these eyewitness accounts about what Jesus did that the gospel writers compiled over time, right? So whenever Jesus did things, Matthew wrote stuff, Luke, wrote stuff for Acts and for Luke as well. And after the ascension of Jesus, after he left, these gospels were very likely copied and distributed to people to mobilize the church. And they probably didn't have it like how we have them now, as like with the chapter and verse and all that stuff. They probably had back in the day just excerpts and stories of Jesus, the things that he said and the things that he did. And so I think, because of the urgency of the message and mission, really, they would have used the latest communication tech of their day to get these things far and wide. And at the time, it was paper, papyrus, or other forms of analog media. So, if they wanted, because the message was so urgent, the gospel writers most likely would have been like, okay, we need to figure out what's the fastest and the most efficient way to get this thing as far as possible. And if Facebook did it, they'll probably be on Facebook. Very likely, I would say, be on Facebook. That's the first thing, right? And the second thing is, if you look at the Pauline letters of the New Testament, I would think Paul would have very likely used social media if he had it during his day as well. Think of each letter that Paul wrote as kind of like a blog post or a series of Twitter threads, comparable to today, and they went viral during his time because he said things, and like especially the stuff for the Roman Church, the stuff in the Romans. It was just like groundbreaking stuff, and people were just like, "Whoa, what is he saying?" And it probably would have gotten massive likes and shares if he were to do it back then. And so, yeah, I think there's more reason to suggest that they would have used it. But there's a caveat, though. Social, uh, while I think the disciples and Paul would have used social media during their day, I think they would have actually been very intentional and careful about how and what they shared, especially considering their cultural context. These guys were a people on the run. They were persecuted by the Roman Church, and so they had to really be mindful of the things that they would share. And so they would care about the message of what they shared, but they also would definitely consider the method with which they shared as well. And so that's just some scratch notes.
Yeah, Alyssa, do you have anything?
I love the Gospels. I love reading the Gospels. And one of the things that I notice is that Jesus, he used stories to share with people things. He wanted to reach them where they would understand it. So like for us nowadays, like a parable about a shepherd, we don't really get it. Like we don't get it because we're not shepherds. But literally there were shepherds on the hills around them while he's telling the story. They got it. So I see Jesus as someone, he's trying to figure out a way to make practical the eternal. I can see him having this awesome Instagram account where he's using what's going on around us, and he's creating these great hashtags and stories, bringing people to them and kind of like getting to the core. Like I follow some great people where it's like, they're just trying to help you like understand and process everything that's going on in the world around us. And I see him doing that. He's that one person you'd want to follow because it's like, wow, it's actually encouraging. Yeah, it kind of calls me on a little bit of my nonsense, but I feel better at the end of it, and I see him as someone who would, because he was, in reality, he was a storyteller. He told stories because he knew that was the way to people's hearts. And a little side note here, when my husband and I got in fights, because let's just be honest, we're not perfect. I know. But so my husband and I get that out there. But like one time when we were like doing okay, he said, you just need to come with an analogy for me. Then I'll get what you're trying to say to me. And I was like, dude, I can't figure it out. And one time I was trying to figure it out and I threw out this huge LA Lakers analogy to him. And they're like, man, I hit it. Like, I'm not really a sport person, but I knew enough. And by the time he was like, oh, I get it. I get what you're saying now. And that's how I see Jesus. He used those same kind of things, but he would do it in today's context. If he was here, he'd be talking about the LA Lakers, or he'd be talking about, whatever it is, because it's how people relate. So yes, I believe he is, but I agree with Kevin. It would not have been in the way that we see a lot of, I'm going to call Christians out right here, everyone. Okay. It's not how a lot of Christians act on social media. I'm embarrassed sometimes to see people who call themselves Christians on social media. They would not have been calling people names or, doing this stuff. When I see Jesus calling people like a brood of vipers in Matthew, I don't see him as being vindictive and mean. He's trying to appeal to him. It's like, you brood of vipers, you hypocrites. Like, it's like he's banging his head against the wall, kind of a thing. And I think that they would have shown us what real Christianity looks like. And I think if we thought, what would Christ have posted if he was me, we'd delete a lot of things we wrote.
That reminds me of those what would Jesus do, that we should have like WWJP instead, and wear those like little bracelets, like, I don't know if that's something that I should suggest wearing loads of them all the way up the arm or anything like that, but sometimes I need that visual reminder. But you mentioned something about that analogy, and I just thought, like, even Jesus having Instagram means that like Nicodemus can send him a DM, like he can privately visit Jesus without the presence or the pressure of other people and say, hey, I have a question. And have this like personal discussion in that space as well. So, and that's a great, like, I agree. I'm glad you guys answered the way you did, and with such great stories as well to attach to it, because this is the thing. I think those of us that are online, we do want to authentically use it and present the gospel in the right way, and have a healthy relationship with it and with others. And so, yeah, there's some things that you've mentioned that are really important. My question is, do we like, can we just simply have, and this has kind of been answered already, I guess, but is the church's Facebook page or the church's Instagram page or your local church's page or your ministry's page, is that enough online, or should we be more present as individuals? And if so, what's the main difference between a church corporate page and like an individual page?
Here's the thing. I worked in an academy. So I went to school actually to be a youth pastor, and not a youth pastor. And I got married. And I got a job at an academy. And I remember thinking, like, I want to have an impact on these kids. And something that was interesting to me was I almost felt like I had more of an impact because I wasn't a pastor, because they didn't, like a pastor, no offense, Kevin, like they expect you to say certain things. But what I know, man, I know.
The wrong way. Now Kevin, I don't know if people saw that, but Kevin, yeah, anyway.
Sorry about that, Kevin. No, so I mean, here's the thing though, like I recognized that it was interesting that I was able to reach people who maybe I wouldn't have been able to had I been a youth pastor, because they don't expect you to say the same things when you're a business manager. Like it's just kind of a different thing, you're connecting on a different level. And I think that's, when you go to a church page, you expect them to say certain things. Like you kind of, I mean, I would hope that if you're going to a church page that they're kind of pointing you to God. If not, there's a bigger conversation there. In this political environment, I live in America. I'm guessing most people here would recognize that by my very lovely American accent. I am surprised. This political season, this whole last few months have been very hard on me as a Christian on my space. What do I post? What do I not post? What do I engage with? What do I not engage with? I will admit that I have snoozed more of my friends than I'd care to admit, and from both sides. And I've come to a conclusion for the first time in my life, as I'm sitting here trying to figure out where do I stand on issues, because I firmly stand on this one platform for some, and then on this platform for others. And I've realized I'm not a party. A party does not define me. My relationship with Christ defines me. And that's why I stand here on this platform and this one on this platform. And my social media should reflect that. If I am trying to be like Christ, then I passionately believe that our pages and our responses should be that way. That's very hard in today's world. It means sometimes turning the other cheek and not saying something. Sometimes it means we stand up and we say something, because that is what Christ would do. But I believe that we do it without calling someone a snowflake or a, you're an idiot, or like, we don't need to resort to name calling to say the message that we need to say. I think that our presence is important because we are Christ's witness on the earth. People are supposed to see Christ through us, not through the church, because through the church, because we are the church. Our buildings aren't where they are seeing Christ. It's through us, the people who attend those buildings.
And definitely
if they are missing that, they're missing something much greater. So we should be public. We should be overt. And I'll be honest, I'm not probably as much as I wish. And it's actually one of the reasons why I started following Kevin. I loved the fact that he was, but in a very judgy way. Like he just made the gospel clear. It kind of felt like reading the book of Matthew in modern times, kind of a thing. So that was my maybe a little bit long-winded answer there, but it's something that's been hard for me, especially lately, as I've been trying to process that in my own mind.
Mm. Kevin,
Yeah, I
anything?
know.
Yep. Cool. Oh, Kevin's frozen.
Oh, are we good?
Crap. Yep.
All right. So, I really resonate with what Lisa talked about, social media being an extension of yourself, how it's supposed to be a reflection of who you are. And today, sociologists say that, we live in what they call an economy where one of the most valuable things that's been traded across entities and and between people is information. And it seems to be that the people who have control over information are seen as the new influential powers. So that's like Google, Apple, and all these tech corporations. If you can regulate information, then you have power. So in this information economy, and the more these guys are talking about this new phase in our world, they're saying that if in this kind of economy, the new currency is actually authenticity. Authenticity is the new currency in our information economy. And what that basically means is that, for better or for worse, people are gravitating towards individuals who they perceive as being genuine, real, and their authentic self. Now, here's the thing though. Their authentic self may or may not reflect the character of Christ, but it doesn't matter for this economy. You see, because the people who are, for better or for worse, the people who are the loudest on one end, in this age of outrage, and people who are on the other end, maybe a little bit more sincere and honest, people who just are themselves, they're the ones who are making an impact, or an imprint on social media these days. And so my takeaway from that is, when it comes to being Adventists and being digital missionaries, being digital disciples, whatever you call it, that's an opportunity for us, because Jesus said, "What they may know you Christians by your love." And and social media as a tool, as a medium, can be a medium through which we can actually show who we really are. Listen, if God, if your lives have been changed by Jesus, if God has actually changed you, you will experience joy, 100%. And obviously you'll have those moments where you feel like nothing is happening and things are all wrong. But there's this trend towards hope and joy and those type of things. And so that's what Christians are supposed to be like. And so right now, more than ever, people, they we're in a place where people are kind of allergic to information about Jesus and Christ and any type of organized religion. That's especially, I can now speak for the West here, the secular West. But for some reason, they now tend to gravitate towards uh, people who now show a meaningful expression of who they are, whether they're Christians or not, right? To give you an example, I'm so sorry, I'm taking a little bit of your time here.
That's why we put you
I'm on
on.
I'm on TikTok, right? And I don't know if we've covered this before, but TikTok, and we can talk about good and bad and all that stuff. But the
TikTok is
reason why I got on it,
trending,
because
so go for it. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
So
your
the
domain.
reason why I got on it was because my youth were on it, and I wanted to just kind of stalk them, and to see what these fellows were doing. But long story short, I just made a video on chai, put it on TikTok. A week later, the thing went viral, and after 5 months, I'm at 120,000 followers on TikTok. Now, here's the thing. Throughout my experience, I had disciple, husband, and pastor in my bio. Okay? Anybody can see that. They come to my profile. But tell me why that there's so many people, most of my followers, at least according to their profiles and at least according to their expressions in their comments, they're not Adventist or Christian or any and they identify with a lot of different things that a Christian probably might be a little nervous about. Like, oh, I don't know about you people. But no, it's amazing. And I was just trying to figure out like what's going on. And you have people saying things like, yo, I don't like all of this religious stuff, but I'm just here for the chai and I'm just here for the good vibes. And I'm like, okay, well, cool. Well, welcome. You know what I'm saying? So the point that I'm trying to say is, for those for the person who's really thinking about, investing in social media or kind of even apprehensive about it, just think of it as another medium through which you can showcase who you are and showcase the love of Christ that's been real in your life, and so to show that to people. And yeah.
Yeah, it's really when you just mentioned something, and I wanted to draw that out. I think when we sent out invitation for people to join, and kind of sent out a mission, I guess, for people to just take last Sabbath, we encourage people to have like a tech-free Sabbath. So yes, you could tune into a sermon if that's how church is operating for you, if you don't have family, but to actually really retreat and spend some time in reflection on our own relationships with God and how that intersects with our relationship with social media. And we also asked people if they were happy to send in some responses of just the types of interactions or experiences they're having with social media and how they might struggle or how they might see it's really handy. And, one thing is, you've both kind of brought it up in a way, that authenticity. And the question was, because as authenticity has become a buzzword, so has, so-called authenticity. Like there are displays of authenticity that are still labeled as such, but not, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of, what's the word, manicured and just like, I can't really explain myself. But people were asking the question, well, how do I really define my authenticity? And I think you've really indicated that first off, it comes from this place of relationship with God and how that flows out. And so one thing I encourage, oh dear, hopefully he comes back in. One thing I encourage people is to definitely jump, if they're going to use social media, to have something, as Kevin's mentioned, as, disciple or follower of God or child of God, or something that clearly indicates, just as, the Jews would have had something that physically kind of presented themselves as being Jewish in a sense in their day. Like they had tassels and things on their robes, or they wore a certain apparel, and that kind of indicated what they aligned with, because there were so many people and so much, different ethnicities and backgrounds and religious perspectives and things going on in that melting pot of a place at the time. Kevin is back, yay. So Kevin, I was just mentioning that, you mentioned your display, like your bio that says, like disciple, husband and pastor, or how you mentioned it. And I was just sharing with people how, in first century AD, they would have had similar displays, I guess, of what they aligned with in a physical manifestation of that. So it might be like tassels, or like how they wore certain things, or a clear, like Sabbath was clearly practiced because, lights went out and things were quiet, or, there was a celebration at a certain time and those types of things. And social media, I think it's important as well that sometimes our authenticity starts with actually just saying, hey, I'm a Christian. Not always like barking it, but just simply presenting that that's kind of where you stand. So when you share your other content, people kind of know that's there if they ever wanted to ask. If that makes sense.
I want to touch on the authenticity thing. The first time I really understood authenticity, I was actually reading a book by Brene Brown, and she really talked about the power of authenticity. And I'm going to be honest, it's hard to be authentic, like really authentic about a lot of things in the church. We're scared of being judged. I call it the Sabbath face. It's like when you come up to each other at church, like, how are you doing? Oh, I had a wonderful week. How was your week? Oh, it was great. We could have been literally having the worst week ever, but we're wonderful. Everything's great. And we don't feel like we can be our authentic selves. And I remember the first time I was challenged to be authentic. And it's something I've owned. And it was actually my former youth pastor. Well, he was a youth pastor at our church. I was an adult. Yeah, I see. I'm telling you, I love youth pastors. They're amazing. So he was a youth pastor, and our daughters were the same ages, and we both struggle with the same chronic illnesses. We struggle with fibromyalgia. We struggle with chronic fatigue. We also struggle with severe depression. I'm being authentic right now, sharing that. And one thing that we talked about was that too many people in our church struggle with this, but nobody feels that they can say anything. And we made an agreement that we would never hide it. We would be public about it. And that's hard. That's vulnerable. That's being like totally owning that and being authentic to people and saying, I'm not good. I could use some prayers, or I could really use some help with my kids. It's taking and being really authentic. And I remember the first time I wrote an article kind of dealing with it, they were like, do you want to use a pseudonym? I was like, no, I'm good. And they go, are you sure you want your name attached? So I go, absolutely. Because if I hide behind a name, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose of what I'm saying. And I will tell you, the scariest time I've ever talked was they actually had a panel on mental health at the general conference. And I was asked to participate. It was all doctors and then me. So we're in the general conference. So I'm in a building with my work associates. And I am being completely authentic and vulnerable and sharing, I struggle with my mental health. And I think that part of authenticity is owning the journeys that God has given us and showing how he helps us through them. Because, and one of my favorite quotes is from Marianne Williamson, and it talks about, and I sent it to Ruth before, is that when we have the courage to let our light shine that God gave us, it subconsciously gives other people the ability to do the same thing. And I think that's important when we hide who we are authentically in Christ, and we can glory in our weakness, where that thorn in our flesh is not what we're focusing on. It's on our focus is on Christ. We give power to other people to do the same thing. We give them the freedom. We live in a world where we're trapped. It feels like in so many ways. Authenticity is actually freedom. It's scary, and you will be judged and people will say something, but authenticity brings freedom.
So as you know, as I'm listening to Alyssa's wonderful sermon here, thank you for. Might as well just do an appeal here and let everybody come to the altar call here. I suspect some people might be wondering, okay, so should I completely now be authentic in social media? That question might pop up in some people's mind, right? Like, okay, so how much to post? How much should I post? And what should I post? So something that helps me to keep this whole thing in check is to remember that social media is an extension of myself, but it's not the entirety of myself. Okay, it's not social media is not who I am. I'm not what I post. There's more to me. There's more to my story than what I choose to share.
Yep.
Now, what that means then is now when we come to, as an Adventist, as a digital missionary, how do you manage social media? One thing to first keep in mind is one of two things. Are you posting for expression, or are you posting for impact? Now, if you're posting for expression, it's like a personal Instagram page. You go on a walk, you see a nice butterfly, and you're like, wow, that butterfly is nice. Let me snap a nice picture of this butterfly, put a nice little caption there, post it. It's nice. Now, some other people can go on the other side and just do social media for impact. So these are like your business accounts. So these are your, I don't know, like your tech accounts, or maybe like a devotional account where you don't necessarily share anything about your life, but you're just there posting stuff periodically, consistently, just sharing something meaningful on a routine consistently, right? But then there's other people who kind of have this mix of both, right? There's this expression bit, and then there's this impact bit. So there's like that little, and for me, like, I would say for most people who are not like social media, managers or tech people or entrepreneurs, like most people kind of fall under that like general, like weird umbrella where you have the expression and impact piece, right? So for me, I have to always keep in mind, like, first of all, just because I don't share something does not mean that I'm inauthentic. Okay. So that's first thing. Okay. That means I don't have to respond to everything. Like Alyssa said. Alyssa said something really important. She said, she during this political climate, she has to figure out, hey, what should I engage in? What should I not? I also have to be very mindful on my Twitter. Like, should I like something? If I like something, what am I saying? If I retweet this, what am I saying? Am I by doing this? Am I being authentic? No. So the thing is, you have to be. For me, what helps me is my time alone with God in the morning. That's important. You have to spend some time, quiet time with God. If you don't spend quiet time with God, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know your story, if you don't know that you are part of a higher story, then you are basically at risk of letting your story be hijacked by the other counter stories in the in social media, whether that's the story of the left, the story of the right, whether it's the story of this person, that person, story, all this. Your story will be hijacked by all of that. And what that basically means is you might react differently, and you might feel like you have to now do something because the other person is doing it, right? So I've realized for myself, and this is me again being authentic. Elisa, thank you for inspiring me. Is to know, is that I've realized that, like, the times where I don't have this personal connection with God is the time that I'm most susceptible to fall into, letting my story be hijacked by all these other things. So for me, I have this principle: scripture before screens. First thing you get up in the morning, no tech. Keep your phone in the bedroom. Use an analog alarm clock. Use your Google, whatever you have. Okay. For somebody else, it might be a chicken. Use a chicken. Train your chicken to be an alarm clock. It's fine. Just make it analog. Keep your phone there, so you're not even tempted to reach out to your phone in your bed. And I've realized the times where I spend time with God, scripture before screens. I'm not saying everything is perfect, but I'm starting on a good foot, starting in a nice place, So.
Yeah, like I really appreciate this scripture before screens thing, and I think the fact that we all are connected right now. Like, you are in California, Alyssa's on the East Coast. I always forget where you are, Alyssa. I'm sorry. Which is a really nice house that I want to live in one day. And I'm in Australia, and so we're talking at all these different times and having this conversation. And so for me, some of the work that I do is based with people in the Ukraine and overseas and random places, and so my phone will be flooding through with like WhatsApp messages and like, good morning, lovelies, from Alyssa, before you get into the nitty gritty of work. But yeah, so that's really important for me, that and this is one thing I wanted to mention, that when it comes to our social media, there is such a thing as social media addiction. People get a real dopamine hit, which is kind of like a reward hormonal reaction in your body to when you do things like accessing social media and getting the affirmation, or the meeting up with people online that see the things the same way as you do. And so there's this addictive nature of it, and that's why a lot of people say, well, social media is bad, because their experience has been, or they've seen the experience of others as the addictive tendency and how it's impacted them in their lives. And so for me, I don't have the willpower to not just accidentally jump onto Instagram and get my my scrolling just my scrolling on for the day, that kind of thing. So I put my phone on the other side of the room and I have something written on like the reflective, the mirrors in my bedroom that says, hey, like God's here too, you know, like it's just like, it's a reminder for me that that's a priority in my experience. And so I say that authentically, that because I spend so much time online for work and then online connecting with people during COVID, social media has ended up being a place where it's not that I'm watching like bad content or, you know, getting caught up in the wrong things. It's just the fact that it's become a distraction for me. And so that's my authenticity piece for the day. But I think one thing is, as I've said, just going, well, what limits do I need to place on myself? Realistically, what's my relationship like with this? Is this impacting my relationship with my friends or my family, my husband, my wife, my work, and kind of going through those types of things as well.
No, I love the fact that there's so many positives about social media. I know we're going to talk about some ways to like maintain balance and stuff like that here.
Yeah.
But like one of the things that like Ruth and I didn't even know each other in February. Okay. Didn't have any idea. Yet I look forward to and get excited every time I get a message from Ruth now. Like we have created a actually very deep and authentic relationship completely through like WhatsApp and Instagram and like, you know, like one of the first times where we hung out, ironically enough, we were making chai together following, you know, Pastor Kevin Wilson's recipe here. So like, you know, so Kevin actually has brought Ruth and I together on our first chai date. And that was like the first time we like hung out together, kind of like without work. We got kind of brought together for work. But like, there's so many good things. I don't live near any of my family. This is how I see my nieces and nephews grow up. I just saw my niece go to college and I watched her walk, you know, like the freshman walk, and I saw her dorm room. I miss those things if it weren't for social media, because I'm not there. So there's like so many great things about social media too. But I know we're going to kind of get into, so I'm just going to kind of help you like steer that over there. You can say,
we're there now. That's where we're at.
How to create that healthy relationship with social media, that seems where most of our challenges lie. My job is literally online all day long. And my old job was literally online all day long. And one thing that I've started trying to do is like with my children this summer, I have 3 children, 16, 14, and 12-year-old. And yes, I had them very young. Anyway, so I have these kids, and all summer long I'm working behind a computer, and guess where they are? They're in front of the device. Like it's kind of where our kids live now. So we started implementing a principle that I really liked, and 1 hour a day, no media, just media free, 1 hour. 1 day a week, we go media free. So like 1 hour a day, we're not on media, but 1 day a week, we were doing media. So it's media free Monday. Every Monday, they got off their devices. I'm going to tell you, they really struggled with this. I struggled with it because they kept interrupting me while I was trying to work a little bit more. And it was like, I knew I had to work through that because I had to help them learn how to curb this. But it's hard when they see me, it feels like constantly on media. So I have to figure out how to like make media free Sabbaths for myself. In my old job, on Friday night until Sunday morning, I never went online. It was the hardest thing in the world. I'm not gonna lie. This shows you. I don't think I'm addicted. I didn't think I was addicted. But I started leaving my phone home when I went to church. And I didn't realize how much like my hands just go to it. Like your brain it just goes there. And I started thinking it was the most freeing thing ever. I just started leaving my phone off. I didn't even recharge it. Like it just kind of died on Friday, and I didn't recharge it until I went to sleep on Saturday night. And I found this like freedom. And I found that mentally for me, I found a bigger freedom. my dream, this is my dream, is to have a week where we aren't on any devices. And that includes me. So I would literally have to take a vacation and not be on it for work or anything. Like, I want a week of just freedom from the screen. I'm not saying everyone needs to do this, but I think we need to figure out, like, where are you at? Like, do you find yourself going to it a lot? If my daughter was here, she'd be okay with me saying this, maybe not, but she's not. So it's okay. That's what parents do, right?
Just don't name which one. We can play guesses.
Okay. If you have children, this is something that's very important, I think, for you to know, is that on their iPhones, I have it so that I know their screen time. I can actually track however many hours my children are on their screens a day. And I found out one week that my one daughter had spent over 72 hours on her screen. Now, mind you, this kid sleeps at some point, right? That was 3 solid days that she had somehow been on her phone. And right then and there, I was like, this isn't healthy. Like, I get this is how you connect with friends, but this isn't healthy. So we had to start talking about, like, okay, how do we create healthy habits? And then she's like, well, mommy, it's different than when you were a kid. So it's like, it's true. It is different. And I have to realize they hang out on Snapchat. They are talking on Discord, like, there's all these things that I didn't do because we picked up a phone and called each other,
What are you wearing for school today?
I don't know. Let me bring my cord with me. But, like, I think we have to understand that this generation is very different, and it's hard to know how to deal with it. It is so, I'm sure Kevin has a lot to say about this. He's dealing with kids who are struggling with probably how to deal with this. So I think as adults, when we have to figure out how to kind of balance it ourselves, and how to rein it in on our own selves before we can actually even say anything to the young people. If you're not controlling your own habits, quite frankly, don't tell me that kids shouldn't be on their phones in church when I see you doing the same thing. I'm just calling it like I see it. I see too many adults complaining about young people's habits when I see the adults doing the same thing or worse. Where do they learn?
They're looking up Ellen G. White's writing so they can prove the pastor wrong.
I'm pretty sure that's it. Or they're just making, like, really cool quotes on word swag of the pastor's sermon. I'm pretty sure that's
it. Alyssa kind of just mentioned that you might have some experiences with kids, Kevin, in your role. Have you got anything else to add?
I mean, I think she covered it, man. Honestly, I think, it's I would say, I'm not a parent, so I'm in a. First of all, I have to confess my intellectual humility in this area. I don't know how to parent a child, so that's Alyssa.
So we're gonna parent on.
So I'm struggling to parent myself right now, to be honest. But with the kids, like, the first thing that I try to do is just model. Like, if I'm telling them, hey, just be aware of your screen time, especially during discussions and things like that. Like, I'm not on it. I'm not on my phone. I try to not be on my phone during church too, so that as much as I want to, as much as I want to tweet this, like, oh, that's spicy, let me tweet that. I'm just like, let me not go over. And my wife, bless her heart, she keeps me in check. She's like, nah, let's not. Wait till you leave, and then they can do it. So yeah, I know. Like, so I'll write the spicy tweet on my little notepad, and then eventually, if I remember, I can tweet that or something, So yeah, modeling is huge. Modeling is definitely huge, and something that I've also a personal practice that's been helpful for me, especially right now in the last couple of months. I've had so much more attention that I've, like, actually had to really, like, take a pause and reevaluate my social media use, and it's like hundreds of notifications every day, for me. So, how do you manage all of that? For me, one practice that's been helpful is to time block, like what Alyssa was talking about. And so for me, I try to time block my social media use. And so that includes browsing as well as content creation as well. So within that time block, I schedule it 1 hour or 2 hours. and then let's not go um, out of those hours, I try to do other things. So that's been helpful. And the times where I don't do that has been very, very bad. So, um, so I'm trying my best not to use social media to fill up all the empty spots in my day, and to also embrace boredom. I want to be bored. I want to really embrace it. I want to embrace the slowness of that. Just being in the moment, being present with my wife, and resisting the urge to quickly go and check my phone. Also, if you're listening to this is I rarely don't like say you must do this, but I'm going to tell you this, especially if you're online, unless you have. Okay, well, take this for whatever it's worth, and you can do what you want to do with it. As much as possible, mute all notifications. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, mute that whole thing. Mute your emails. Mute it. Just mute it. The only thing for me that I've kept on I've unmuted is my texts and my calls. Every single thing has been muted on my phone. Yeah. So, like. I just cannot imagine my phone dinging and buzzing every second. Like it's too much. So, and also here's the thing, we talked about if you really want to create meaningful content on social media, you have to protect your attention. You have to protect those times where you can actually focus and create meaningful content that will reach people. If I've realized for myself, whenever I'm always going on my phone, if I'm checking notifications, this and that, what's happening? My attention has been fragmented. So whenever I now go into the creating phase, your attention, it's a non-renewable resource. It starts with like this lot in the morning, but then as you go throughout the rest of the day, your attention it just gets depleted. And so whenever I'm checking my phone, like I'm giving it attention, right? So really have to protect your time and your attention. Those two are non-renewable resources. And so in order to do that, time block, and then don't go on social media. Like I have to do that for myself, for my own sanity. And it helps me in the long run too. You're not missing out. You're actually preserving mental energy to actually create meaningful content for the kingdom. So yeah, put boundaries.
And somebody asked a question, how much time would Jesus be spending on social media? Well, sometimes Jesus spent time with a multitude, and then sometimes he went away. And so I think it's just about knowing this. I would suggest actually, if people want to read the story or the Gospels and try to just read it through the lens of like a social media reading, if that makes sense. Like, how would Jesus would he have used Instagram for this? Or like, would he have really shared that? If he called somebody a brooding viper, did he do that without having any prior relationship with this person? Or did he first engage in conversation with them in the history before he then went and said something that was, rather than seeing somebody that you've never met online and being like, you're an idiot? And when we're talking about like safe and avoiding conflict, that's like a main thing. But yeah, in terms of Jesus coming back to that idea of taking some time aside, and he spent a lot of time on his own with his Father. And that was how he replenished his energy and replenished that intention to be able to know how to interact with people, who to interact with, and when. And so I think that's an important takeaway as we approach our relationship with social media. Is this Holy Spirit inspired? And how can we know until we've actually received that inspiration? By spending time with God and prioritizing our identity in him rather than our identity in social media and the addictive affirmations that come out of that.
I loved something that Kevin talked about, like the practical. I'm very much about practical. Like if we gave you a lot of theory and a lot of whatever, I feel like if we leave you with no practical, then we've really kind of failed. So I love the idea of time blocking something I really love. I'm going to actually follow his advice. I'm actually going to turn off all the notifications on my phone because I do get lots of dings, and it's insanity. But I want to actually share two tools, I guess you could say, that I use to help me with my social media situation. The first one is if you use Chrome, there's something called News Feed Eradicator. It's like an extension. And I use this when I find myself, and you can only use it on a desktop, so it doesn't work on a phone. But so if you find yourself in front of a laptop or something like that a lot, and you find yourself just kind of like going to Facebook, and then all of a sudden 10 minutes went by and you realize you've scrolled Facebook, and then like you've refreshed and scrolled it again, you know, like if you kind of find yourself ever getting in that trap, Newsfeed Eradicator will literally take and it gets rid of your newsfeed. I put this on 2 days ago, and I don't realize how many times I just go and I click the little Facebook icon, and I'm not sure why. Like, I literally have no idea why I'm going to Facebook. But if I had gone there, I would have just started like scrolling. And what it does is it gives you this like little pithy quote. Like, actually, I'm going to pull mine up right now and see what little pithy quote it gives me instead of giving me actually what I'd want, which is seeing normal people here talking to me.
There's normal people here talking to you right now. It's myself and Kevin.
Yeah, well, yeah, but no, I'm saying like on Facebook, like I don't see any feed. So what it means is that I have to be intentional. If I'm going to Facebook, I have to be intentional. What am I going there to look for? Am I going to look for what Ruth has posted? Okay, then I go to Ruth's page. It just kind of takes care of that mindless, endless scrolling. So I like that. Another one I got for my phone is called the Forest app. So you build a little forest of trees, but what it is when I click on this, I say I want 15 minutes, okay? All of a sudden my forest starts to grow a tree. But if I go anywhere else on my phone, it will kill my tree. Now, I know it sounds silly, it's not even a real tree, but it bothers me to think that I'm killing my fake tree on my fake forest, you know? And what it does is it basically kind of like locks down your phone just for a short little burst of time, but then you get this cute little forest that like, you know, pops up with every, you know, time you do it. It sounds kind of silly. I'm totally going to admit it, but it kind of is something for some people that just helps you. It's like, it kind of just blocks down your phone. It locks it down. So you're not just like, you can do like serious work. I think that like deep work, like when you need to go into a deep work mode, like you don't want to be distracted, it kind of just makes it so your phone kind of gets in lockdown, and you have to really choose. Like if you want to go and do something, you have to consciously say, I'm willing to kill this tree. Which to me, I see it more as like, I'm willing to kill my time. Like I'm willing to like do exactly what I'm trying not to do, because I want to like, so it kind of messes with your mind a little and makes you kind of just stop and think, why am I really doing this? So that's the Forest app. You can also get that as a Chrome extension. So I also got it as a Chrome extension. So these are just like some like little tool kind of things I like to just suggest because it's practical. It's just some practical ways that you can lock yourself down a little.
I was going to mention, you mentioned the terminology deep work. For those of, some people are kind of following along with the digital missionary thing in Sam's book club. He talks about a lot of different books that kind of flipping through. And I don't know if this one's been mentioned or whether it will be, but there's a guy named Cal Newport, and he talks about this idea of deep work versus shallow work. And I've been listening, even if you just jump on podcasts, there's a deep work podcast and a lot of content out there, which I can recommend that people would check out as well. It just talks about how to really set yourself up, knowing your limits, to do the work that you need to do and to not be distracted, because every single time you look at your phone, you think it's just 30 seconds, but that actually stops you from being able to focus for another 3 minutes, in terms of how your brain's wiring and how it's trying to like re-establish that attention again. And the other thing as well, somebody mentioned this, and I just want to briefly touch on it and we'll wrap up, is we have talked about conflict and we've talked about the interpersonal relationships that sometimes go awry online. And one question that came up, and it's talking about how do we interact safely with people online? And this question was deeply touching to me because it happens. People from, you know, we're super connected with people all over the world, and some people have bad intentions when they connect with you. And we know that for children. We know that children there was a school I was working at last year, and there was a child on Fortnite, which is some game thing which I can't wrap my head around. But on all these computer games now, you can interact with people and like socially, like, you know, direct message and this kind of thing. And this kid was being asked essentially for like nude images of themselves, and this kind of stuff is happening all around. The nuanced stuff that happens for us as adults and for teenagers as well, that people show probably a little bit too much intention to be in, like to speak intimately or to build an intimate relationship with you online when you've just met them. And this person's asked, my first instinct is to block or delete people who are, as they say, hooting or hollering, and sometimes it's a little bit less obvious than that. But their question is, well, what's the right thing, you know? And I think the underlying question is, well, how do I show Christ when people are crossing boundaries and I feel unsafe on the internet, especially in social media?
I'm going to be honest. I have no problem blocking somebody if I feel like it's inappropriate. They're not trying to connect with me to have a relationship with Christ. Most likely, I'm actually very selective as to who I pick as my, like, if any of you watching, for instance, probably friended me on Facebook, I probably would not accept it. No offense. I'm just very cautious. I have 3 teenage daughters. I work for a GC entity. It's a very weird world I find myself in. 2 years ago, I was just, you know, a layperson in Texas, and now I'm in a much more public fishbowl kind of a thing. So I've always been very careful about locking that down, but I get unsolicited messages frequently. They're not trying to connect with me, and I'm not going to sit there and try to have a Bible study with them. I'm just going to be honest that they're not. I mean, maybe it would have reached them. I don't have time. I'm going to be honest. This is one of those things where it's kind of like a time thing. I'm going to just pray that somehow God reaches them in another way. I don't need to be that person right now. Now, if somehow the Holy Spirit like really lays a heavy conviction, go for it. But just pray that somehow they'll hear a radio program or a sermon or something like that. But if people are sending inappropriate pictures, I get those. My husband gets those on Instagram. And it's like, if I ever get anything that's not a message from a friend, I'm always just like, I'm very wary of it. Like I'm very cautious to open anything. My daughter, one reason why this is actually kind of close to me is my daughter actually started talking with a person on Instagram. One time, like, I felt like in my mom sense, it's like Spidey sense, but it's mom sense. It's actually stronger than Spidey sense. Okay. So like my mom sense told me something was wrong. And so I said, you know, I want to see your phone. And the deal was, if we pay for your phone, we get to see it whenever we want. I almost never asked to see it. I trust her, but it's still my right as a mom. And I started reading this conversation she was having with this man, and I could see it was getting ready to, like, it was a grooming kind of a thing.
Yep.
You've got to stop it. And even as a grown woman, we have to protect ourselves, because it's not even like that. I don't want to just see a picture. I also want to protect my heart. I'm married to my best friend. He's the love of my life, you know, but here's the bottom line. I don't want to let my heart go astray either. So I think for women, especially, it's not bad to protect ourselves. Having read the question, that would be my thing, is it's okay to protect yourself. It absolutely is.
In the same way that you do in the real world. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus put boundaries, right? I mean, there are places where he didn't want to go, and he expressly said, like, hey, I'm not going to go there right now, or that's not my time. So he put very specific boundaries between people. So the common misconception is that, you know, he will be all loving to all people. And yeah, we have to be, but hey, we have a priority to, you know, the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Like, we have a priority for self-care, and self-care can oftentimes be the best expression of love, because our vessels need to be perfect so that we can actually be conduits of love to other people. And you know, if there's any inkling of any thought in our minds that, you know, somehow we're not being unloving by blocking some people, I think only the contrary is true. the opposite is true. I think, yeah, preserve who you are, preserve your attention, preserve your, yeah, all of that stuff. It's deeply biblical. So
Beautiful. And I think that's a really great way to wrap up. You mentioned Jesus has boundaries. I think it's really important that we do as well. He had that human nature, which meant that he pursued God and God's wisdom at all times. And I think if that ever happens to you, or if you ever feel uncomfortable online, just go straight to prayer. I want to thank you guys for joining in. I'm sucking on a soother because I've got a sore throat. They're very good, by the way. But yeah, thank you for your time. Alyssa and Kevin come from very different, experiences in terms of profession, and it's really interesting. Alyssa wanted to be a youth pastor, so there's that. We all enjoy chai, which is something else that we have in common, and our love for Jesus. And I want to encourage people. There's practical things that we've talked about. We've talked about the theory behind it, and as we head out, if you guys continue to have questions, feel free to ask them on the Facebook group. It's called Adventist Digital Missionaries for those that aren't clued in on it. And yeah, just as we wrap up, I just want to thank you for the questions that have come through the comments that were made. And yeah, I just want to encourage you guys, if you're not sure whether, social media is the right place for you to be right now, or how to navigate that, spend some time, reflect on it, remove apps that aren't necessary and then put them back on as necessary, and just apply those practical tips that we've talked about. They're not forever. Sometimes they're just, it could be a week, it could be 24 hours, and you can clearly see how things change based on your needs as well. Thank you once again, Alyssa and Kevin. Have an awesome evening, and I'm going to get on with my day, and all the best for your ministries as well. Thank you, guys.
thank you so much for the opportunity. Take care.
Perfect.